I want to share with you our Alzheimer's Association vision and mission, just to let you know what is really guiding all of our efforts so that we can improve the lives of people everywhere, all our people that are suffering from Alzheimer's or other dementias, and also for their caregivers. And our vision is a world without Alzheimer's and all other dementia. Our mission, the Alzheimer's Association leads the way to end Alzheimer's and all other dementia by accelerating global research, driving risk reduction and early detection, and maximizing quality care and support. And this program is one of the ways that we are supporting our vision and our mission. This session is going to be hosted by Dr. Elvira Carrizal-Dukes, who is a Chicano Studies professor at the University of Texas at El Paso, and also Ronnie Dukes, who is a comics artist, and myself, Sarah Yvonne Jimenez, and I am a nurse and a faculty member at the University of Texas at El Paso. And we also have Dave Hernandez, who is the Director of Programs and Services for the Alzheimer's Association West Texas chapter. Journal writing and doodling. So just to share a little bit with you about what this process entails. It is expressive writing. It's a process by which one writes down their thoughts and their feelings. Doodling is drawing or scribbling and involves the creation of a spontaneous image. The activities of journaling and doodling enhance self-exploration, emotional processing, reduce stress, and promote relaxation. The tools that you need for journaling and doodling are not very many. It's very simple. All you need is a pen or pencil, a piece of paper, and any piece of paper will do. You can use a piece of paper, a napkin, old newspaper, whatever you have near you. Or you can also use a sketchbook or a diary. Sometimes people do like to keep track of all of their journals and all their doodles so that they can revisit those at a later time. So it just depends on what you'd like to do. But really, all you need, again, a pen, pencil, and a piece of paper. What are the benefits of journaling and doodling? Well, there are so many, but for one, journaling and doodling, the process of doing that actually helps you to clarify your thoughts and your feelings. And we know that practicing journaling and doodling can actually help you with problem solving. It allows you to release a lot of the emotions that you have pent up, all the stresses that you've been going through, all the painful experiences. And as you know, as people who are suffering from dementia, Alzheimer's, or people that are taking care of people that are suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia, can have a whole buildup of emotions and stress over time. Other benefits of journaling and doodling is that it improves your cognitive functioning, meaning you should be able to think more clearly, your thinking process get a little bit better. It also counteracts the negative effects of stress. So we all know when we get super stressed out, how exhausting that is, how unpleasant a feeling that is. And so this activity actually counteracts all of those negative effects. It also promotes self-healing. And what's best of all is that you don't have to be an artist. Anyone can do it. It's something that all of us can enjoy. And it's, I think most of all, it's just really a whole lot of fun. So I will go ahead and give the table over to Dr. Carrizal-Dukes. She's going to take us through our journaling section.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you everyone for being here today. The days are getting colder, and it's a great time to be indoors journaling. But also, there's probably more stress that's happening right now in our lives because of the time of year, but also just what we're going through in our world right now. And so this is a great time to vent, and journaling can be used as a way to vent, especially when you don't have anyone in front of you that you can vent to. You can just vent to your journal. So it allows you to kind of get out any aggression, which is the topic for today. And it allows you to just deal with your emotions, identify them, think about them, reflect on them, and then hopefully it will improve your health, especially when you encounter those situations that stress you out or give you anxiety or bring on aggression. And so I'm very grateful for this opportunity. Thank you to Alzheimer's Association West Texas chapter, and Sarah, it's a pleasure to work with you, especially a professional in the health industry right now. So your knowledge is so invaluable to us. So thank you so much for this opportunity. So let's go ahead and begin with our journaling for today. Let's go to our next slide. For these sessions, Ronnie Dukes and myself, we're with DUKEScomics.com, and we've created some short 4-panel comics for the Alzheimer's Association West Texas chapter and for these workshops. And basically what we've done is we've taken our actual characters, Cruz Ochoa and her father, Mr. Ochoa, from our graphic novel, which is 107 pages and it's called A.W.O.L. So these are the actual characters, and she does, you see a scene at the beginning of the book where she's actually administering insulin to her father. And so even though she's an adult, she's, they don't have their mother in their life. And so she's become a caretaker for her father. And so today's theme is aggression. And this is our comic of the day. And before we begin our journal prompt, we'll go ahead and talk through each panel. I'll read the dialogue, and then Sarah's going to help us sort of unpack it in as far as how we deal with it in an Alzheimer's situation. So let's go ahead and go to our first frame. So these are comics that I wrote, and Ronnie is the artist. And so in this first frame, we see it's early in the morning. Cruz just woke up. She's in her robe and she's yawning. And her father is already hard at work inside the house. And so her first response to her dad is, "You're up early, Apa." And his response is, "What else is there to do around here?"
So this is probably a pretty typical scene. You've slept in a little bit, and your loved one is up early and doing all kinds of stuff, and you might be feeling a little guilty. Oh, they're up and they're washing the dishes and cleaning up. But in this particular panel, we can see a little bit of maybe irritation or aggression with Cruz's dad. And aggression can be very frustrating for caregivers. Aggression is common when a person perceives danger if they feel scared or afraid or surprised or alarmed, or if they're going through some kind of physical or emotional pain. It's not always clear. But the reason for their irritation and aggression is because they're continuing to have that degeneration of brain cells and mental deterioration. Uh, and this is what is causing those behaviors. And it is important to understand that these changes, are irreversible. Things will continue to deteriorate, perhaps at varying levels. But it's important for the caregiver not to take that personal, just to understand it is not a reflection of their loved one, but really it's more of a reflection of the disease. So when you're trying to manage it, you're really managing the behavior and the disease and not really the person.
Thank you, Sarah. So let's go ahead and go to the second frame. And so Cruz's response to her father is, "You're right, Apa. How can I make it better?" And he responds right before he takes a drink of his coffee. He says, "Get rid of COVID so I can see my son."
So here we see he's venting, he's expressing a frustration, and really it's not so much different from the frustrations that we're all experiencing right now. Every one of us we're just very fatigued with dealing with this pandemic, and we just want everything to be better right away. So this is one way that we can definitely relate to someone who's suffering Alzheimer's dementia. They know something's different around them, and it's just so frustrating. And so as a caregiver, what we want to do is when we sense that aggravation, that irritation, is to detect that, and identify those triggers if we can. We want to connect to that person and see if we can figure out what is bothering them. And so the next step to that is just addressing physical issues. You want to, make sure that everything in their physical environment is okay, that, they're not too hot, they're not too cold, there's not something irritating, maybe some kind of clothing or just something that's bothering them. And then the third step is to address the emotional triggers. So it's really important to focus on the feelings, not the facts. You might say to yourself, well, the way they're feeling and they're getting so upset doesn't make any sense at all. In this case, actually does make a lot of sense, because you can tell that Cruz's dad is really feeling the brunt of emotions with being confined during a pandemic. and feeling frustrated he can't see his son. But we want to just focus on those feelings and emotions. And what we're doing is we're joining the reality of the person. We want to say their name. We want to reassure them that we understand and that we're there to help. And so you see that Cruz does this really so wonderfully when she says, "You're right, Apa. How can I make it better?" In that way, she's really giving him that reassurance.
So for this next frame, Cruz's response to all of this is she sits down, she's sitting in front of him, eye level. She has her own cup of coffee, and she says to him, "I'm sorry, Appa. I understand it's frustrating being in quarantine. Let's video chat with him. I bet he's awake."
So this is a great example of what really we're all going through right now. As a matter of fact, this session we're delivering it through kind of like a video chat format, and so this is basically how we're trying to communicate now for with people at the distance. And so what Cruz is doing is, she's recognizing the emotions that he's experiencing. She's trying to understand his frustration, and so she does say, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, Appa." She apologizes. If it seems to help, even if you did nothing wrong, the apology really reflects their reality and not yours. And obviously, this pandemic, this quarantine, it's none of our faults, and but we have to deal with it. And so she's apologizing and saying, "You know what, I understand, let's video chat with him. I bet he's awake." So, step number 4 is reassessing and planning for the next time, having a strategy in place. So, what Cruz can do in this situation is figure out, what did I say to my dad? How did I talk to him that kept him calm, that refocused him? And this is the kind of strategy that she can keep in mind for the next time that her dad becomes irritated or agitated. And the last step when you're dealing with agitation in someone with Alzheimer's or dementia is safety. Safety, especially when they're coming to the more advanced stages of Alzheimer's, where they're, wandering, they're not sure, where they are, who they're around. You want to let your neighbors know and the family members know and first responders know that, what, we do have someone with Alzheimer's in our household. If they happen to, get outside, or, they seem to be lost, please help them, and know that they are someone that has Alzheimer's or dementia. The other thing is you want to make sure that in your home that you have removed weapons or any items with which the person may harm themselves or others. So it's really important to create that safe environment, not just emotionally for your loved one, but also physically in the physical environment.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Okay, so for this last panel, we see that it's the end of the day and Cruz is alone at her writing table. We can assume her father has gone to bed. And this is her first time throughout the day where she gets to reflect on how this is affecting her, being in quarantine, but also helping to remind her father, and trying to keep him safe and keep herself safe as well. So for her journal, she writes, "Dear Journal, today we video chatted with my brother in the time of COVID." And so, this seems like a very simple thing, but that's what journaling is. Journaling is not meant to be difficult. It can be as simple as just writing down what you experienced that day. And so for Cruz, this stood out to her.
Yes, so we see Guru sitting there just like many of us who have been caregivers, who are caregivers, just, being exhausted, not just from the usual routine of taking care of someone with Alzheimer's or dementia, but just the added stressors of doing it during a pandemic. And so it's important for us to realize that caregiving is one of the toughest things to do. It's probably the toughest thing that you'll ever do if you're a caregiver. And so it's important to understand that stress and sadness and anxiety, loneliness, anger, exhaustion are common. And I would say even more so during this time of the pandemic. We know that caregiving in itself increases the risk of significant health problems like anxiety and depression, heart disease, and stroke if you don't manage that. If the caregiver doesn't manage those over time, this can be very detrimental to their own health. So, self care and relaxation are extremely critical anyway, but definitely during this time of COVID-19, it's even more important to make sure you're able to take care of yourself, that so you can continue taking care of yourself and also taking care of the person that you're caring for, the person that you love with Alzheimer's and dementia.
Thank you, Sarah. And this is so important. You know, we've done this workshop now. We did it in the summer and we've been doing it now in the fall. And when we first started, I was not a caregiver at the time, but now recently in the past 2 months, I myself and Ronnie also, we've become caregivers for my mom, who is wheelchair bound for the next 6 to 9 months. And so I started to experience some physical stress on my body that I was not used to before. And I honestly didn't understand this important point that Sarah has talked about how caregiving increases the risk of health problems. And it is so true. I started having breathing problems and I had to go to the doctor, and it turned out that I had asthma, and I have never been diagnosed with asthma before, ever. This is the first time. And I think it's a combination of having to wear a mask, because even though I'm quarantining with my mom and I'm her caregiver, I still wear a mask and I still wear gloves whenever I'm around her. And so I think the mask also sort of made it more difficult for me to breathe, and then some allergies that I was just experiencing. So it was a combination of so many things, but the physical stress of being a caregiver, I think, also just made all of that come to the asthma level. And so this is so true, and I really had to slow down and think about, you know, I don't have to put so much physical stress on my body. There are things that caregivers learn from other caregivers or nurses or other physical therapists, and they teach you, you know, tips and on how to move, how to transfer your patient or the person you're caring for in a way that doesn't, you know, put so much physical stress on yourself. So I'm learning as I go, but it's true. I myself have experienced the health problems that were never there before. So journaling has given me an opportunity to just kind of write about these things, to just kind of take a moment and breathe and think about how this is affecting me. So we'll go ahead and let that lead us into our journaling assignment, which is on the next slide. And it's really an assignment. It's more like just a prompt. If for those of you who want to keep a journal and you're just not sure what to write about, this is just an example of an exercise that you can do anytime, and you can even repeat this exercise more than once, because there's always going to be a different situation that you end up writing about, or a different day that you're writing about. So before we begin, if everyone could just take a moment to get comfortable wherever you're seated or standing, adjust your body to be more comfortable, and let's just take 3 deep breaths. So if you could breathe in through your nose and exhale through your mouth. Again, breathe in deeply through your nose and exhale through your mouth. And one last time, breathe in deep through your nose and exhale through your mouth. Even just the act of being conscious of our breathing, we're always breathing, but when you're actually also consciously breathing at the same time while your body is breathing, it just brings more awareness to the fact that our bodies are like an instrument, and to some extent we can control it. So, you know, if you're ever having a moment where aggression is building, you can stop and just take a deep breath and help that to lead you into the next moment. So for this exercise, think of a situation where you felt you were not in control of a situation. And so we're going to take a few minutes to describe the situation where you did not feel in control. What did you do? What happened? What did you say? Who was present? And how well or not so well did it go? And how do you think about it? And finally, just what did you learn? So first, just think of a situation where you felt you were not in control of a situation. And then just describe what happened, and most importantly, how did you feel and how did you react? So if we can just take 2 minutes right now to write that down. If you could just wrap up your last thought. And then if we could go to the next slide, please. Okay, so now that you've written this experience that you've had where you didn't feel like you were in control, take a minute to respond to that. Think about what depleted your self-control and how did you react? And if you haven't already, think about what would you do differently the next time. So let's go ahead and wrap that up. And now that you've reflected on thinking about what depleted your self-control, just for a minute, what do you have achieved by thinking about this? You know, what have you achieved by thinking about what to do different next time? And what have you learned about yourself? Okay, so if you could just wrap up your last final thought. So I'll share an experience that I wrote about that just happened recently. Here at home, as I mentioned, I'm a caregiver for my mom who is wheelchair bound. And about a few weeks ago, I wanted to take her out at night because it was a really beautiful night and it wasn't too cold. And so I wanted her to go outside and get some fresh air. And so all of us, everybody in the home went outside. And somehow when we closed the door, it locked. And so we locked ourselves out and none of us keys. There was only one cell phone that somebody had, and the battery was dead. So we had a cell phone with no battery, no charge, and then my mom was in a wheelchair. It was late at night. It was getting a little cold, and so of course I felt out of control. And there's no easy way to get into the house unless you have keys. And so what I ended up doing is I said, well, you know what, we'll figure this out. Eventually we'll get in, even if we have to call 911 and ask fire department to break a window. And so I just had to relax. And most importantly, I had to stay cool because I didn't want my mom to have further stress. I mean, she's already dealing with her own health issues. I didn't want to add stress to her. And so I tried to stay cool and just kind of laugh about the situation. And then we just kind of went down the list and we tried to find a battery phone charger, which we did. There was a vehicle parked in our driveway and the door just happened to be open in this vehicle, and inside there was a phone charger. And there was an outlet outside of my mom's home. So we were able to get like a minute charge, just enough charge to be able to call my brother and ask him to call one of my mom's friends who has keys. So it's like a long story, right? We didn't have everyone's phone numbers memorized. The only number I knew was my brother. And so anyway, to make a long story short, what I feel like I achieved is a funny experience, right? I could kind of just laugh about this. My brother laughed because he thought it was funny that we all got locked out and my mom being in a wheelchair. But my mom's friend finally showed up with the extra set of keys. And so it just kind of reinforced the relationship we have with her. It created sort of a funny experience. We had to work together as a team to figure out how to get in those. But not only that, we made a plan for next time. You know, this could have been a worse situation. And so it made us think, okay, if this were ever to happen again, what would we do? And so we ended up getting an extra set of keys. We buried them somewhere. We wrote down everyone's phone numbers that we might need in an emergency situation. And so now, you know, hopefully if we ever get locked out again, we'll at least have a plan. And so that was just, you know, it was a moment of feeling out of control. And I think when I was younger, I might have been more stressed out about it. But in this situation, I had to think about my mom and I had to think about her wellness. And so I had to stay calm and just act like everything was going to be fine, which it did end up being fine. So that's just my little story that I thought about. Sarah, do you want to add anything, or do you want to share your moment of lacking self-control, or how do you see this exercise as being helpful for a caregiver?
Well, I think we've all been there when things have gone really way out of control and we panic, and then we have to remember, our loved one is counting on us. So we try to keep our calm and keep our wits about us. And so thank you so much for sharing that experience. I think we can all relate. And you just have to remember that most things, there's a solution. We just have to take a breath, a moment, regroup, think about what we can do, and stay calm, realizing that some things are just out of our control, but there's some things that are in our control. So we can control how we react, and how we try to calm ourselves and other people around us down. So I think that's just something that happens. I'm so glad you were able to find a way to get back into your house. But sometimes some of these things turn out to be later things that you can actually kind of laugh about. And it's important just to remember that happiness is found, even in the smallest moments. There's joy to be had, even when things seem like a disaster. And that, you have to keep your hope that better times lie ahead for you and your loved ones. So thank you so much for sharing your experience now that you're a caregiver. I remember when I was a caregiver, my parents, it seemed like there was a lot going on. I wrote about it in my journal, how they would go through this cycle of having a health issue, going to the hospital, then to the rehab, then to the nursing home, then home again, then something happens, back to the hospital. And that time felt very out of control. And I just remember that I had to just try to keep calm, take a moment, and try to find the places where we could laugh about things in the midst of that all. And that would help a lot. But thank you so much for sharing that, Elvira. I was like, yeah, I think we can all relate to some kind of a moment like that.
And I love what you said, Sarah, that happiness is found in even the smallest of moments. I mean, that's so true. So thank you.
Yes.
I learned that today.
So we could go to the next slide. And here's the part where we kind of reflect on what we just written. We're going to take a few deep breaths, just take inventory of how we're feeling right now. And like Elvira was talking about, when we do a reflection, we want to go back and think, is there something that I've learned from that? Something I didn't see before, something surprising. And those are those are the many lessons that we can learn just from our own reflections. So we could go ahead and advance to the next slide. So now we're going to go ahead and get into our doodling session with Ronnie Dukes. Take it away, Ronnie.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you so much for everyone who joined us today. My name is Ronnie Dukes of DUKEScomics.com. My wife, Elvira, and I, we actually have our own comic book publishing company where she's the writer of our books and I am the artist. And I'm going to share with you some of my tips and tricks as an artist of how I use doodling in my daily life. Doodling is so important for me because it helps me to relax my brain, to allow things to flow without trying to censor myself. Doodling is a great way to just have a stream of consciousness. That's an awesome way to take stock of actually how you're feeling, your emotional state. Once you doodle and you are just like kind of in a trance on the telephone as you're doodling, on an envelope, when you get off the phone or when you really look back at what you drew, it's really easy to pick out things that you didn't know that you could draw before, things that draw your memory, things that draw your emotions that are more visceral, and so that's the power of doodling. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to give you a couple little tips and tricks of how you can doodle, although it's not very hard, but how I doodle and how you can get the most out of it. First of all, for doodling, you don't need anything special. You can use a pen or pencil, a crayon, a marker, a pastel, Sharpie, anything you have available, and any kind of piece of paper. Although, even though you can use any kind of piece of paper, I would love for you to use something that you will keep, just like you would a journal. And one of the best places to doodle is actually in your journal. You could doodle in the margins, you can doodle on the next page. Try not to doodle on the backside, just because it'll affect maybe how you can read the doodle versus the text when you go back to it. Because that's another thing I would love for you to do, is to make sure that you go back to your doodles. Don't just doodle or journal and just put it into storage. It's a great way to think of it as an emotional diary, where you're taking stock of all of your things that happen in your life, and you can grow from it. Because like what Davida said, with us getting the locking the keys in the house, or being locked out of the house, that was very frustrating for me. I didn't handle it nearly as wonderfully as Davida did, because I'm in problem solving mode. And journaling and doodling is a great way to kind of reassess that, so that I don't behave the same way next time. I can get out my frustration with just strokes, or just by just revisiting it, so that when this situation happens again, I can say, "Oh, this is like Groundhog Day," or think of something that's very humorous, or something to give it levity. You really have to. We're talking about aggression today, but sometimes you have to aggressively seek your peace. And that's one thing that journaling and doodling does. It allows you to aggressively seek your peace. And so with that in mind, let's take a few deep breaths. We're going to breathe in 3 times, in through your nose, out through your mouth, and then we'll get started. Okay? So let's take a deep breath in and out through your mouth. And another deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And now we're going to be drawing with a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And now make sure you're in a very relaxed position, and that your elbow and your arm is rested. So when you're drawing, you don't feel stress on your shoulder or your elbow. Okay, I'm going to grab my pencil in a way that's just very comfortable for me, nothing too special. Okay, and I'm going to start sharing my screen, and let's start with it. Great. So what we're looking at right here is my sketchbook. And what I like to do is start off by just doing like nice, easy strokes left and right, or right to left, whichever you feel most comfortable with. And this is really just to loosen up your wrist. And this will allow you to just gotta get in the motion, get in the moment with your drawing by just left and right. Now let's go up and down. You can go just down, or you can go just up, or both, but just up and down, and try to overlap with the left and right. And it doesn't have to be perfect. As you can see, my lines are not going straight up or straight down or straight to the side. But what I've done, though, is create something called cross-hatching. And within cross-hatching, it's really awesome because not only do I create shadow by doing this, but I can also create depth by doing this as well. So if you notice these lines that are kind of like more on an angle, kind of joining together, let's draw a little line that kind of makes a square around it. And all of a sudden, we have dimension. Okay, and that's just go from the line I created out, and just do a stroke. Go left to right or right to left, the same thing, but we're just organizing our doodle in some way where we can see an actual shape come into play. Okay, and keep in mind, these are just lines. Now let's change up our lines a little bit to get a little bit more relaxing. And we'll just do swirls. Do as big a swirl as you like, or as small a swirl as you like, but just try to do swirls. And the reason why I'm doing this kind of swirly, wavy line is because I'm now looking for a little bit of peace. Sometimes drawing curved lines, organic structures gives me a little bit more peace than when I'm drawing straight lines. It feels a little bit more like I'm kind of in my head a little bit more. And it doesn't have to be just up and down. You can go anywhere you like with the swirls. Go left to right, right to left, go on an angle, and use your whole page. And the great thing about these swirls is not only am I just kind of loosening on my wrist, but I'm creating quadrants or areas that I can work in. And now I'm thinking about aggression and I'm trying to be peaceful. And one of the things that puts me at ease is humor. And so within these squares or within these swirls, I'm going to find an area, like I'm going to highlight this area right here, just so we can focus in on this. And I'm going to notice that there is a surface here or an area that looks like a fish. One of my favorite things in the entire world growing up was goldfish crackers. So this little fish is my little goldfish cracker. And I think they're all smiling. Okay, and then with here, let's say I find this is my reaction to the goldfish cracker. So just start to fill in your space with things that jar your memory or just other shapes. So I'm just going to do some stripes in here, and I'll do a couple swirls within my swirls here, and start to really kind of look at what you're doing. And what I'm going to do here is just take a moment and not draw for like 5 seconds and just look at what I have on the page, and then dive right back into it as I found something and just start doodling further. So I had that little thing right there, which looks like kind of lumps or a crown or a top of a castle, and I'm going to make that a chicken. And just because, and just do a round circle for the body and another circle here for the wings, or maybe it's a turkey. So I'll do the top and the bottom, and maybe he has weird hair, or she. So let's just use that same shape and just add to the turkey using this same little shape and see what we get. So we get a spiked up punk rock turkey, who knows? But the whole point of doing this is to find things that you didn't know you could draw, find things that remind you of other aspects, and also to just kind of get out your frustration, your anxieties. This is a great way to just kind of just zone out for a moment. When you're just drawing lines with no structure in mind, you find yourself losing track of time only for a moment. And that is a great way to kind of help reset your brain. Just like when we're asleep at night, we are actually processing our daily goings on in our brain via dreams. And think of doodling as kind of a daydream where you're actively trying to process these things as opposed to just at night. So as you can see, I'm just using the straight lines, I'm using the swirls and circles. These are the only shapes that I'm using here. And from there, I'm actually going to do one more thing for you to see. Let's actually bring in a new layer here. Slide this over a bit. And in here, I'm going to show you something really cool, which is just circles. And I'm showing you these circles because this is something that we can all do. It's not terribly difficult, and they're not straight. They're not even trying to be straight. Now, within these circles, let's find some center lines going from the top to the bottom. And they could be right in the middle. It could be off to the side. It could be on a slight angle, but as long as you do top to bottom. And now, on those same circles, do left to right. And these lines can interact at any point. So here at the high top, here towards the bottom, here right in the center, and here we'll go to the top again. And just to the left and the right of your center line, draw 2 more circles. Just to the left and the right of your center line. Now, what we're doing here is actually creating a structure for what we can use for face. Now you can do lines for the expressions on the eyebrows, and you can do just a simple line for a mouth. Or it could be a circle, or it could be something that's a little bit more aggressive or scared. That's really up to you. Now, these are just tools that you can use when doodling. So I can add this little thing in here, this little guy, or a drawing into here. Well, I won't add that so that I won't confuse anything. But basically, when you're drawing, the point is that you can, within this drawing originally, create those kinds of shapes, those kinds of structures, so that you can build upon your drawing, your doodle, and make them into whatever you want them to be, or whatever they want themselves to be, which is probably more accurate. Okay? So those are a few tips and tricks with doodling with Ronnie, and I hope you all got a few great ideas, and I hope also that you were able to find something within the drawing that you didn't know that you could draw, or that kind of guides your brain towards something else. Now that we've finished, let's take stock and take deep breaths in and out through your mouth. Take a deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth, in through your nose, and out through your mouth. And have a look at your drawing. And I hope that you are found something really awesome. And I'm going to hand this back over to Sarah to guide us the rest of the way. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Ronnie. That was just so amazing. I'm always dazzled by your amazing doodles and journaling things that you guys are putting together. Elvira, it's been really great. I really enjoyed all of our sessions, and I always get something out of the doodles. My doodles don't look half as amazing, but it doesn't matter, because the whole point is that we're able to just draw and doodle to our heart's content. So I'm going to give you a little bit of information about Alzheimer's. So I think we can get back to our slideshow just to give you all some information about how to contact Alzheimer's Association if you need to. Or also if you'd like to share your work with us. So again, the art of journaling and doodling is something that we all possess. We're all capable of being very creative. And if you would like to share your work with us, we would love to see it. You can submit your work to #journaling for Alzheimer's or #doodling for Alzheimer's. Please don't feel like you ever have to share anything. Journaling and doodling can be a very personal thing that you just keep for yourself. But we just want to give you that opportunity. If you would ever like to share that with anybody, with us, we can go ahead and see that through these hashtags. Next slide, please. So for this season, for our fall, we did just complete the 4th session. But we want you to know that we will be back in the spring with some more sessions for you all to enjoy, some new comics and some new activities. So we will keep you posted on that. If you would like to contact us, I have the information here. It is 1-800-272-3900, which is the helpline. So that is 24/7. So if you have any questions about anything at all having to do with Alzheimer's or dementia, whether you're a patient, a client, a caregiver, family member, anyone can definitely access information they need from using that 24-hour helpline. You can also direct questions or concerns to West Texas at alzheimers.org or else.org/West Texas. And there are plenty of people here available to give you resource information and to give you the support that you need as you go through this journey with Alzheimer's and dementia. So we'd really like to thank you for participating today. It was so great to see all of you. And again, we will keep you posted on the upcoming sessions that we will have in the spring. I'd like to thank Ronnie Dukes and Elvira Dukes so much for all of their great help, their incredible talent, their passion for helping caregivers and people suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia. Thank you so, so much. And thank you so much to the West Texas chapter for making this programming possible for all of our people out there in the community. So thank you all so much, and we will see you in the spring.